Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. Ever wonder how many times a day is a normal, healthy amount to poop? This episode is for you. I know you've wondered. Hey everyone, it's Keri Glassman, your host of the Living a Nutritious Life Podcast. And this week we have the extraordinary Dr. Roshini Raj on. Dr. Raj is a graduate of Harvard College and NYU School of Medicine and a board-certified gastroenterologist. She's also a mega media personality. You've probably seen her on the Today Show. And she's the founder of not one, but two amazing companies, TULA and Yayday. In this episode, we chat about what has changed over the past couple of decades in gut health, what specific probiotics to take and when, and who should be taking them, the gut-brain connection, and her top 3 tips to support gut health. We also chatted about the importance of calming your nervous system before meals and the impact of stress on the microbiome. There is so much good, useful information in this episode, and Roshini is just a joy to chat with. So I won't make you wait any longer. Let's dive in. And as always, please remember to rate, review, and share. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, a celebrity registered dietitian nutritionist. Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Welcome, Roshini. I'm so excited to see you here today and to chat with you.
Hello, Keri. It's awesome to be here. It's been a while since we've really had a good chat, so I'm just so psyched that we're doing this today.
I know. I am so excited to talk with you today. I always love seeing you. I love the last time I ran into you. I was so excited to see you because it had been so long, but I always just love seeing you also when I get to see you on TV or when I read you in about you in a magazine. I'm always learning from you. So I was so excited to have you on the podcast today to be able to have one of those conversations that we might just have in private for everyone so they can learn from you as well. So really, again, just really grateful and excited that you're here with us today. So I want to just start with you're a gastroenterologist. That I told everyone that just in case they don't know who you are, although I'm sure many people know who you are. But in case they don't know who you are, I did talk about that a little bit in the intro. But I want to start with the fact that you are a gastroenterologist because I know when I think about gastroenterology and when I think about what I learned in school as a registered dietitian 25 years ago, it is so different than what I think about now when I think about gut health. It is so completely different. So I'm really curious from your perspective as a gastroenterologist, what do you think has changed the most? And I know that's kind of a broad question, but I know what comes to mind for me. And I'm really curious from your perspective, what's changed the most and what are the things that you didn't even learn at all about when you were getting your degree? Because I'm assuming how many years ago was it? When did you become a doctor?
Well, it's tricky with medicine because I finished med school in 97. I finished my internal medicine residency in 2000. I finished my GI or gastroenterology fellowship in 2003. So I guess I didn't start practicing gastroenterology until 2003. So
Okay, but that's still many years ago. Like that's similar. That's actually very similar timing to me becoming a registered dietitian and starting my practice. Very similar timing. So it is around the same time. And I just remember, I think when I learned about what I learned about the gut, I should say, I always think it's like I learned anatomy. Literally, that was it. We just learned the anatomy of it. You've got your small intestine that leads to the large intestine. And I mean, it was really minimal compared to what I hope people are learning in school now.
Exactly.
And what I've learned over the years. So anyway, what for you has been the biggest change?
100%. Well, first, before I get into that, I am so grateful to be here. And just like you were saying all these nice things about me, I feel the exact same way. Every time I see your face or one of your posts, it's just, when you know someone really knows their stuff and you've known them for many years and are so qualified to give out great information. I learn from you, and I'm just so glad your voice is out there because these days of social media and all these things, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So it's really important to have very credible, really smart women is always great too, giving us what we need to know. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So going back to gastroenterology, it's funny that you mentioned like sort of when I was first training, because it really was definitely not in med school, definitely not in internal medicine residency, but towards this kind of would say the middle or end of my gastroenterology fellowship. So this was about 22 years ago. I did just initially learn about this thing called probiotics and the microbiome. And it was very preliminary. It was just talked about in the GI tract, how there are some good bacteria there. And if you mess that up and if you disrupt the balance of the bacteria, bad things can happen in your digestive system. No one was talking about any other part of your body, but you may get a condition called C. diff, where you get a bad type of diarrhea. That was really the extent of it. But
C. diff did get a little bit of airtime.
Exactly. Because C. diff was like, if you take antibiotics and you kill off all your good bacteria, you might get this thing called C. diff. So that was the first hint of, actually, we have some good bacteria. Not all bacteria are bad. We shouldn't get rid of everything. And I remember being really intrigued by that when I first learned about it, to the point that, we had to pick a topic for our second year fellowship presentation. And I picked this topic of probiotics. So it was still pretty kind of not talked about, a sort of esoteric topic, but I thought it was interesting. So I read all the papers, which there weren't that many at the time, but, kind of went into the research, did a summary for my presentation. And I just remember thinking, I had no idea what it was going to grow into, but I'm like, this is kind of cool and different. Like we always were taught back, hundreds of years that bacteria are bad. That's what causes illness. That's what causes infection. And, when they discovered penicillin, I think it was on the army, like in the war, and they saved so many lives because they were able to treat infections by killing bacteria. So sort of turning that idea on its head and saying, actually, some bacteria are good was fascinating to me. But I kind of just I learned about it, I presented it, but then, didn't really use it in my daily practice other than this idea for C. diff. But as my years of practice went on, I started to see just percolating more and more people talking about this idea of healthy bacteria. There was then this whole idea of the microbiome and kind of identifying what we all have in our intestines, the fact that we have trillions of organisms, mostly bacteria, but also yeasts and viruses, and many of which really helped us, not only in terms of our digestive tract, but things like our immune function. I think that was probably the next frontier in terms of what do these bacteria do. And then after people were talking about immunity, it just started blossoming into, well, it might also affect how we, metabolize food, like whether we gain weight or don't gain weight. Now it's become, and I wrote a book, which you have there, called Gut Renovation, just a couple years ago. Thank you. But basically, we now know our microbiome affects pretty much every single aspect of the body, of our health, short-term, long-term diseases, anything from mood to dementia to cancer to heart disease, diabetes, like blood sugar management. All of these things have links to the microbiome. And so that's why I'm so kind of grateful to be a gastroenterologist. I joke it's a good time to be a gastroenterologist because I feel like
it's true.
Actually, you and I, and that's the other interesting thing is I think, at least from a med student perspective, nutrition was a very short sort of, course where we got very little exposure. And now I feel like people like you, people like me really need to work hand in hand, because how do we feed our microbiome is the key to our health, and that is so much about what you do and what you talk to your clients about and how you train other RDs, because that is really the key to longevity, the key to being healthy right now. So I think that's another thing that's changed is med schools realizing that nutrition is just an incredibly huge part of overall health.
Oh, absolutely. And I so appreciate you mentioning that.
Yes.
I appreciate that you appreciate the role of nutrition, as I know you do.
Yes.
I love that. It's funny, I would say we have similar experiences with obviously you went deeper into it in med school than I did, but similar experiences with how much we were taught in this area,
Yes.
In our actual traditional training, because like you said, yes, we learned about C. diff. I remember maybe learning the teeniest bit about the microbiome at some point. I can't even remember exactly when I first learned about it, but so little. The large majority of what I have learned has been since my traditional training, getting my master's. So I'm really on track with you there. When it comes to the microbiome, let's talk a little bit about prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics. For everyone out there, I'm sure most of you do know, but probiotics we know are the good bacteria in our gut. Prebiotics are the food that feed the probiotics, and postbiotics are the metabolites, so the byproducts of the probiotics consuming the prebiotics. And going off of that, can you tell me, in your practice, how do you talk about probiotics when someone comes to you and says, I have digestive issues going on, or whatever they might be, whatever they might have. If someone has IBS, if someone has Crohn's, if someone has whatever might be going on, how do you first address the use of probiotics? Do you start with food? Do you start with a specific probiotic? Because I do want to get into the specifics with probiotics and how to choose the right probiotic. And
Well, I think there are two things. I think one thing is it depends on what the person is coming to see me for.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the general population who may never see me in their office, but could also benefit from probiotics. So, and like the book was really more for the second category. Certainly can help the first category, but Gut Renovation was all about how can all of us be taking better care of our microbiome, since we now know how important it is. And I went through so much of the research, which now, honestly, it's not out of date because it's still valid, but there's probably 10 times more even in 2 years, but just validating the fact that, yes, there have been links between Parkinson's and your microbiome. There have been links between cholesterol and your microbiome. So I kind of gave all the evidence in sort of the first half of each chapter, but then I would go into what can you do to optimize your microbiome. And it's called Gut Renovation because I did sort of a metaphor on when you're renovating a house room by room. And so the bedroom was all about sleep in your microbiome, and the kitchen, very important, probably the most important chapter, is all about diet and your microbiome. So you perfectly explain what prebiotics and probiotics and postbiotics are. How do you get them? How do you make sure you're getting them every day? I think that diet is a great place to start, because what happens there is you're getting a great variety, so rather than taking a pill that may have one strain or three strains of probiotics, usually when you're eating fermented foods or drinks, you're getting more of a diversity of different types of organisms, which all are beneficial. So that's one thing I definitely recommend. And when it comes to probiotics, it's not actually a huge list. So, it's things like yogurt for sure. But then things like kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh, kefir. Prebiotics is a much bigger list, because now we're talking, and you could talk about this even way more than I could, but most types of fruits and vegetables that are containing fiber, that is the perfect fuel for your good bacteria.
Right.
So those are great prebiotics. And it's so interesting to me because we always knew fruits and vegetables are great for you, and they're great for many reasons. Of course, they have antioxidants and all these other vitamins and nutrients that we need. But I think one of the reasons they're so great is because they feed our our microbiome, good bacteria. And I think that's sort of like, we knew they were good. Now we know why they're so good. So that's why I think, and there's a stat that I quote very often, which says 95% of Americans are not getting the recommended amount of fiber. And, I think people like you help people kind of combat that and try to incorporate it more into their diet. But I think that could be one of the reasons why we see a rise in colon cancer in younger people. We see a lot of different autoimmune diseases on the rise because we're not feeding our microbiome the things that it needs to really be robust and healthy and be well balanced. But to get specifically to your question about, which probiotics do I choose for which patients, I think it does depend. So if someone, for example, has a history of being on antibiotics and maybe they had C. diff in the past, or maybe they don't, but something has thrown off their bowel movements, their regularity, then I tend to go for more of a yeast probiotic, actually, because that has been really helpful in those situations. Whereas for someone who's coming in with bloating and, we've already checked them for celiac, we've tried cutting out dairy, those things have been ruled out. Then I go for something more that has either bifidobacter or a blend of bifidobacter and lactobacillus. And these involve individual discussions. So I definitely think people should, if they're having a specific GI issue, talk to their doctor about it. But if you're just a general person who's saying, I just want to optimize my gut health, I think starting with food is a great way to go. And
you have a general, but on that note though, for that person that doesn't have a specific GI issue going on, they're just looking to up level their health, they're looking to improve their overall gut health for better immune system support, et cetera, do you have a general go-to, and I don't mean a brand even, but a general specific strain of a probiotic that you recommend? Because I usually say it is personalized. If you're having specific issues, it's personalized, obviously based on the individual's medical needs and history and lifestyle, but also and you have to look at that specific strain that helps that issue that they have going on. And there might be some trial and error there, but for that overall person that's just looking again to up level their gut health, there are some basic strains that you can start with. So I'm just curious what that one would be, aside from starting with the food to support their gut.
Right. So, I actually developed one for TULA, and we don't have to buy that one, but we do contain strains.
No, but I want to hear about that too, though.
I wanted to make sure it had strains of bifidobacter as well as lactobacillus reuteri is one that's very well studied for not only GI health, but skin health. And we'll get into the whole TULA story later. So I think that's a good one. I think Align, which is Bifidobacter infantis, is a really well-studied one as well. So these are kind of more general, if you just want to be healthier in terms of gut health, that I think can be very helpful. But I think that prebiotics, if you're just taking probiotics and you're not focusing on prebiotics, you're kind of missing, I feel like, more than half the picture, because the prebiotics really will help all the bacteria, all the good bacteria flourish. So what's already in your gut, if you're taking a probiotic, it will help that, populate more. So you definitely don't want to forget the prebiotic part of the picture. And really upping your fiber intake is so important in your diet. And if you can't get it in your diet, this leads to my next company that I just launched, which is a fiber company, but really wanting to make sure in some way you're ensuring you're getting enough fiber.
Yeah, it's such a good point, because I think there's so many people out there, especially, by the way, this time of year. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start taking my supplements. So they start taking maybe a probiotic every day, thinking, okay, I'm doing my probiotic every day, but they're not making those other changes. So you're taking a probiotic. You say, well, I'm not really noticing anything different. Well, first of all, I always say, well, maybe you would have gotten sick. You would have gotten a cold had you not been taking it. So that could have been happening. But otherwise, in other cases, like, well, maybe they were having some gut issues though, and they're not seeing any difference yet. And I say, but are you doing the other half of what you should be doing with that? Are you supporting that probiotic by eating the right foods? And so I think, again, so many people sometimes and I'm a big fan of supplements. I think you know that. I think there's absolutely a many times and places where they're amazing, but you have to do the other work to really, I would say, like, activate that or to reap the benefits from those supplements. Yes, some things are just going to do things on their own, but for the most part, you have to do the other pieces of the puzzle. Like, you have to do the lifestyle pieces to really, again, reap all those benefits. So I love that you said that with the probiotic. Like, yeah, you can take your probiotics, but if you're not eating fiber or taking a prebiotic with your probiotic, you're not going to necessarily, reap all those benefits.
100%. And, the two other things I wanted to say just in response to what you just said is, I mentioned it sort of in passing, but if you're not taking in a lot of fruits and vegetables, even if you're taking a prebiotic pill, like a fiber pill, you're missing out on all of those really important nutrients, those vitamins, those antioxidants. So, and those have so many effects on your gut health and on your overall health. So you're definitely not going to be healthy if you're just taking pills and not working on your diet. But the other thing is, I think when it comes to gut health, people think, okay, probiotics, prebiotics, I'm good. And one of the main points of my whole book is that there's so many other aspects of our lifestyle that affect our gut microbiome and vice versa. So I mentioned the bedroom chapter. So it turns out that sleep, actually good quality and good duration of sleep, actually helps foster a healthy microbial balance. But the reverse is also true. They did a really interesting study on medical students who are notoriously, sleep deprived, and they looked at them during one of their night shifts. And after 2 weeks of working nights and just having their circadian rhythms disrupted and not sleeping as much, they showed that their microbiome profile, meaning the balance of good bacteria and bad, really shifted towards a more unhealthy pattern. So it's just so fascinating to me that sleep affects your gut. Stress,
absolutely. Yeah,
for sure. We know that cortisol, that hormone that is like coursing through our veins under, when we're under chronic stress, can really, negatively affect the balance of your microbiome. And then the reverse, we think that having a more balanced microbiome can improve your mood, can help with even things like anxiety and depression. So there's a lot of other things. It's not just about supplements and diet. It's also about, are you managing your stress? Are you sleeping? Are you exercising?
I was just going to say, isn't there research on exercise and your microbiome?
They're showing they compare sedentary people to very active people. They do stool tests. They check their microbiome. The ones that are sedentary have a much more unhealthy profile. The ones that are active have a more diverse and healthy, good bacterial profile. So there's a lot of different things that can make a difference. And so, you got to kind of take a holistic approach to your gut health.
I love that. That goes right along with living a nutritious life. I love that.
The good news is these are all things that are also good for just overall health. We're not telling you to do anything that's crazy or unheard of, like getting better sleep, exercising more, managing your stress, whether that's through meditation or deep breathing, or all of these things we know can really have a big impact. So,
well, that's the thing too, is all of these things go together. Just like I always say, like all different foods, and you were talking about fruits and vegetables. So the fiber is good for, it feeds your good gut bacteria, but we also know it has antioxidants, which does other things. Like we're going to find out other things that are in fruits and vegetables at some point. We're going to find out other things that are in fermented foods, right? We're going to learn more because we're constantly learning more, and all of these things work together, right? So there's many benefits there's multiple benefits to different types of foods that work on many different things in the body. And then all of those things are linked together. And that's what I really talk about with the nutritious life, how all of these things work together.
Yeah. And, and I love that we're talking about kind of positive changes that you can make and the importance of those. But I think it's also important to bring up the things that you shouldn't be doing. And one of them,
absolutely,
the ultra processed foods, which is getting so much kind of airtime right now. I'd love to hear your perspective as well on that, but for sure those are types of foods that we know are just overall not good for your health for a variety of reasons, and we now know are destructive and toxic to your microbiome. So that's kind of the opposite of what we've been saying. Like, we knew vegetables were good. Now we know they're good for your microbiome. We knew ultra processed foods were bad. Now we're realizing they're actually really bad for your microbiome. And again, that is one of these specific things people talk about when they're coming up with theories of why we're seeing an increase in colon cancer in young people, is this, increase of people consuming ultra processed foods.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you about that when you brought that up before. I wanted to expand on that a little bit. Like, what are your feelings on that? And because I'm sure, and many people listening have heard all of these statistics on the increased rates of colon cancer in young people. And I mean, I have my thoughts on it. I'm curious what your thoughts are there on that. And are you seeing that in your practice?
I am seeing it, and it's alarming. I think we've made such great strides with people older than 50 because, screening rates have really improved. They're still not ideal, but they've improved a lot. And, we check people used to be 50. Now it's moved down to 45 because seeing people getting colon cancer. And it's just, it's never good when you feel like you're a modern society and you have science and things should be moving forward when you feel like you're moving backwards when it comes to one type of cancer. So it's not a good thing that we're seeing, now I think this is for men under 50, it's the number one cause of cancer death is colon cancer. So we definitely need to figure out why this is happening. And I don't think anyone has really proven why yet. But I do agree with people who are theorizing that it has a lot to do with our diet.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so interesting because I have to be honest, like I grew up with two working parents. I'm an only child. I kind of was very independent when it came to food and eating. And this is all to say I was not a healthy eater growing up. I just really grabbed whatever I wanted when I went to the supermarket with my parents and they did their thing. I did my thing. But what's interesting is I saw this article and it kind of made sense to me, which was if you just took a loaf of like packaged bread 30 years ago versus now, like it wasn't healthy back then, but it's so much more unhealthy.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, because I think some people say exactly what you're saying, but I grew up eating, chips and pizza and this, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
What's the big deal if my kids have this? Like, and I have that conversation a lot. And I think people really do think that it's not so bad. I grew up on all that junk and I eventually started thinking about my health when I was 40 and I'm fine. Right. I really do think people have a little bit of that attitude, especially busy working parents, right? Because there are so many things to think about. And I don't blame people for thinking about that because in their lives, they're right. But exactly what you said, I say that all the time, but our food system has changed dramatically. Right. What foods were years ago, they are more processed now. And there are more of these processed foods. And on top of that, there's environmental things going on that were not going on. So there's all these other factors that are again working together against us, not for us. And we don't know exactly how, right? But I just think we have to be even more careful because exactly what you said, that bread example is a perfect example of that.
I mean, I saw this article and it made so much sense because I think they said, in 1970, it had like 5 ingredients and maybe they weren't all great, but it was only 5. Now it's like 35 and like 31 of them are terrible. So things have changed. And anyway, my whole point of bringing that up is I think that might be why we're seeing increased risks of or increased rates of colon cancer and other things. So I think we're getting into one other thing. I'll just make the point though, because you also brought up the fiber before. It's that we're having more of those more highly processed foods, and also we're getting less of the whole foods with fiber that we need for the good bacteria that we do have. And then also I just want to add on top of that those good whole foods also, to some extent, aren't grown the way they used to be grown either. Our soil has also changed. So there's a lot of different layers to why I think it's harder to get the good nutrition that we need and why we may be seeing this. I mean, anyway, so I just wanted to add that other layer to it. No, I think that's so important. And even, just the sort of lifestyle element of how many people are cooking at home and how often versus not, and all of that, makes a huge difference. So, which is why, like, you really do need to make a conscious effort to make yourself as resilient as possible by having those whole foods and making sure you have the, multicolored rainbow plate and all of those things, because there's a lot, like you said, that's sort of working against us environmentally in terms of the food system, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked a little bit, you brought up at one point a little bit about the gut-brain connection. Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that because I find that so fascinating. First of all, what do you think about just your gut instinct? When I say that to you, like what comes up for you? Because I'm so curious, just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that you brought it up because gut mind is really top of mind for me right now. And it's part of what motivated me to start Yayday, because we actually, really thought about that when developing the product. But
and we're definitely going to get to Yayday, by the way, because I want to hear all about it.
Oh, no rush on there. But so I think gut instinct is something that's so interesting. When people talk to me about, what does it mean, the gut mind connection? And I was like, well, have you ever had butterflies in your stomach? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's it. That's the gut mind connection. It's just something that we all experience. all the time, actually, without realizing it. Our gut and our brain are in a two-way conversation. That's how we digest our food without having to think about it. Like, okay, now I'm going to digest my food. No, you don't have, that's your brain and your gut talking. But sometimes it does become apparent when you have a big presentation that you're about to do and you suddenly have to run to the bathroom. Those are examples of how our gut and our mind work together. And I think the gut instinct is so important because now we know there's a physiologic sort of basis for it. And I think I've even been reading about things like in relationships, like if you feel uncomfortable and you feel in your gut that you're just like tense around someone, that's probably not the situation or the person that you should be around. And I just think that's so fascinating because it's like your body really is telling you what's going on and you should listen to it. So yes, we now know that there are neurons and nerves that are constantly running back and forth and neurotransmitters. We know that we produce so many transmitters in our gut. And there's a whole field now called nutritional psychiatry based on this fact that how you kind of take care of your microbiome, how you take care of this gut-mind axis can have a big impact on mental health.
Right. And we also know that there's the whole enteric nervous system. So our gut has its own nervous system. And so, the reason I wanted to ask you about this was because I think some people can understand, oh, my gut just told me that. Like they just have, that gut reaction, that gut instinct, and they get that, but they don't necessarily understand that there's the science behind it and why that really happens. Exactly. And so that's why I wanted to ask you about it. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like when you're nervous about something and your brain is registering, okay, this thing is happening or about to happen and I'm nervous. And then it's sending signals to the nerves that are in the lining of your intestine. And it can cause your intestine to start contracting. And that's why you might feel the butterflies, or you might feel some rumbling, or you might feel this urge like you need to go to the bathroom. That is an example of your brain and your gut having a conversation that's very real and that's very, rooted in science. And so, and that's the other thing is because sometimes people, particularly with irritable bowel, have a very heightened sense of that. And they're kind of feeling uncomfortable a lot of the day because something that even maybe only mildly would upset them really starts to affect their gut. And so we talk a lot about in my practice about how are you managing those feelings of anxiety? Can you at that moment just kind of visualize a stop sign, take some slow, inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale, all of these things that kind of cut off that signaling that is going a little bit haywire and then kind of resetting and getting yourself back into balance so that you're not experiencing the GI distress as well as the mental stress at the same time.
Yeah. And one thing that you're just reminding me of, so I talk to people a lot about before they sit down, let's say people that are, especially people that are anxious or stressed. I would say before you eat, you really want to make sure that you've done something to calm your nervous system a little bit, because if your GI tract if you're feeling stressed, your GI tract is really not in the best place to digest and absorb food. Right. So you're not in that good place. So you really have to calm your nervous system even more so right before you're eating. Do you ever talk to people about that, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's incredibly important. And we talk about that. We also talk about, this idea that when you are stressed, you're also not, because of not just like sort of mentally, and we all talk about stress eating and comfort eating and, going back to your childhood, this is what you reached for when you're stressed. But there's also this physiologic basis for that, where when you have stress hormones or your brain is at this heightened sense of anxiety, it's causing the hormones that make you feel full and hungry to get sort of out of whack. And so you may be craving food, but you're actually not truly hungry. But because your hormones are telling you are, you're going to eat less healthy foods. You're going to eat larger portions. So I think what you're saying about really trying to reset mentally before you eat is so important, because even on a physiologic basis, your body is going to try to get you to do unhealthy things for, in terms of eating if you're really stressed.
Right. And it's one of those, I always think it takes a little bit of intention and you have to, take a moment and think about it. But it's one of those really simple, easy behaviors that you can incorporate into your day multiple times a day that can actually have a pretty big effect on your digestion and your overall nutrition and health.
Yeah, I think it's such a great idea. And I think it's not even just about stress. I just love this idea of intentional eating because so many times we eat because we're bored, or we eat because we're thirsty, or it's, and I think just taking a second, and I don't want people to become obsessed with it or, overthinking it, but just like, am I really hungry? Or, is this what I want to eat right now? And also just not eating while you're on the run, standing in the car, watching TV, like really making it more of I think one of the reasons, and again, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but one of the reasons why they kind of look at Europeans and this fabulous sort of lifestyle of wine and cheese, and yet they don't have the same rates of obesity, is like they treat meals as a very,
totally agree.
Simple, fun, long experience. And we here, and I'm guilty of this too, like we kind of just like shovel the food in as quickly as possible and move on to the next meeting or the next whatever. And that's not conducive to healthy eating and healthy digestion and any of that.
100%. I totally agree with you. And I would say that on that note, when you think of, sometimes we're like, I don't get it. Europeans sit and they have 3-hour leisurely lunches with wine and cheese, like you just mentioned, but how come they're thinner? How come when I'm in Europe and I do that, I lose weight on vacation? Right. Well, one, I think the foods are less processed. That's one thing. So we can go back to that processed food conversation. Yes. But the other thing is you might have a 3-hour meal, but you probably ate slower and maybe even ate less than standing up, shoving it in while you're waiting online to pick up your kids somewhere. Like, I really think that's part of it. It's a slower, more relaxed way of eating. And I think, again, you end up eating less and really listening to your body and stopping when you're slightly satisfied, on top of also, again, just having your nervous system in a little bit of a better place, being a little more relaxed, and better quality food. So there's multiple things going on, but I'm totally with you there. Obviously, there's so many things we can do to improve our microbiome. Yes. We've talked about fermented foods. We've talked about taking certain probiotics. We've talked about managing your stress and getting quality sleep and exercise and all of these great things that we can do. But I've also read that we can't actually, I'm so curious what you think about this, we can't actually change our microbiome makeup. We can't really change the good bacteria that we have. We're just changing what the probiotic does. So we're changing the outputs, we're changing the metabolites that they can create. But we're not actually changing the makeup of the probiotics. Is that, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure if that's true, because they have definitely done studies on different interventions, whether that's lifestyle interventions like exercise or actually taking a probiotic. And then they kind of re-examine the microbiome profile, and they do see shifts in more. I mean, you're probably not going to have a new bacteria unless you're taking a supplement, but you will have a larger amount of one or the other. I mean, the question is, how sustainable is that? And for example, if you stop the probiotic, does that go on forever? Probably not. You probably need to keep taking the probiotics or continuing the lifestyle change, or hopefully both. But no, I do think it changes how they sort of function as well, and how they interact with the prebiotic. And
which is also, by the way, the main goal. It's not even necessarily the probiotic that you have. It's what they're doing for you, the metabolites that they're creating that act, that do things for you. So it's actually the job that they're doing. It's not just, it's like if they were all little workers in there, right? If all the bacteria were little workers, it's what they're putting out. It's not necessarily just the bacteria. So that's actually the most important part. But I was just curious.
Yeah. And I mean, one of those byproducts, which well, but maybe your audience isn't as familiar with, there's these, short chain fatty acids.
Yes, exactly.
This is probably the most important byproduct that we know so far. I'm sure there are others that we'll figure out, but that's what happens when the probiotic kind of devours the prebiotic and produces these great, butyrate is one, these short chain fatty acids. And actually, I think it's important for us to talk about this, because we keep saying how important your microbiome is, but how does it work? Like, how does it help the rest of your health? And I think the short chain fatty acids are a good illustration of that. So basically,
wait, and I just want to stop you for 1 second, and then I want you to continue with exactly where you are, but because I talked about postbiotics at the very beginning of this conversation. Yes. So the short chain fatty acids that Roshini is talking about are postbiotics. They're the byproduct of the probiotic consuming the prebiotic. So I just wanted to clarify that for anyone.
Exactly. Yes, no, that's a good clarification. So we have a lining of our intestine. So literally think of it as, a plastic lining on a balloon or something. And this lining is really important, because this keeps everything that's supposed to be in your intestine in your intestine and it doesn't allow it to leak into your bloodstream. But what can happen with that gut lining is you can get these microscopic kind of holes in it. It's not as intact, and things are able to leak through. And when they leak through, that can trigger inflammation. And that's inflammation throughout your body, not just in your gut. And we know now that inflammation is kind of the root of all evils. It can contribute to obesity, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, wrinkles, like everything.
Everything,
and so you don't want to be in this sort of hyper-inflammatory state. We also know that inflammation just makes you age quicker, makes your cells age more quickly. So there's a term called inflammaging, which is basically just to that phenomenon. So that's really why we think the microbiome is, at least one of the reasons, and probably the most important reason, is because a healthy gut microbiome, and specifically these short chain fatty acids, keeps that lining strong and intact and without holes and tears and leaks and all that kind of thing. And that's why it's so important to keep your microbiome healthy, because it keeps that strong. That means you're going to have less body inflammation, and that's going to help every potential disease, every condition, just energy, mood, all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And our microbiome is, they also do all kinds of things, right? Like you said, there's other things that is, like you said, that key thing of keeping that lining really strong, but there's many other roles. I mean, even, and we don't need to get into the whole GLP-1 conversation, but even as it relates to your GLP-1 hormone, our microbiome's health also is linked there. Again, that's a whole other can of worms. We won't go down there, but there's our microbiomes are just, like you said, so key to our overall health. And why, again, going back to something we talked about at the very beginning, why I think your field of medicine is just so fascinating. And I think you chose that right path. Like when
as I said, yours as well. I think those basically, they work intertwined, and these are kind of the things that everyone should be focusing on right now, in terms of whether your goal is anti-aging, whether it's more energy, better mood, better skin. I think you and I are the people that they need to be talking to, or people like us, I should say, because that's really the key to it right now.
So on that note, what would you say are your top 3 things for people to do to keep their gut health in check? Top 3.
So I think number 1, because it's kind of like it's going to help in just a very broad way, is increase your fiber. Like I said, it's apparently 95% of Americans are not getting the recommended amount of fiber. So you really want to up that. Second thing I would say is managing your stress, because I do think the mind connection is very strong. And so for me, I do a lot of deep breathing. I do meditation every day. These are things that I use to really kind of keep the stress under control. I also exercise, which helps with stress as well. And then I think the third is, as opposed to the fiber, which is very proactive, and I'll kind of throw probiotics in there just so I can get 4 instead of 3. But the other thing is really trying to limit the ultra processed foods, because I think those are just toxic to the gut, to your body. And so that doesn't mean, everything I eat is raw and unprocessed, but I do try to keep it kind of to a minimum.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, because I think you're going to get so much bang for your buck with those 3 things, right?
Exactly.
Increasing your fiber, managing your stress, multiple benefits going on, not just your gut health, right? And then, what you just said, reducing ultra processed foods, many benefits you're going to receive from that. So I love that. I love that. That's great. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, because I do know that you started TULA and you also sold it, which is so phenomenal. You're such a crusher, not only doctor, incredible gastroenterologist, but also entrepreneur. So we should do a whole episode on that, by the way, because it's so impressive and you've done so much great work as an entrepreneur. But let's talk a little bit about the gut skin connection, because there is a big gut skin connection. We know that our skin has its own microbiome. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit about how our skin's microbiome connects to our gut's microbiome. And then I guess you can also throw in about TULA there too, because that was your skincare company that you developed and then sold, which I know had a whole probiotic side to it. So
100%. I mean,
I know that was a lot. I know that's a lot, but I just have so many questions for you.
I get it. So yeah, that's how TULA started, was this whole idea of how the gut and the skin are interlinked. And so for me, I was kind of minding my own business as a gastroenterologist. I did start
just being an amazing doctor and going on the Today Show all the time, just, hanging out, nothing to do. So I figured I'd start a business.
I met you at the Today Show probably, or something like that. So you were
I think we actually may have met did we actually meet at the Dr. Oz show? Was that the first time we met? I feel like it was for some reason in the green room there.
Oh, anyway.
I
don't know exactly when, because I saw you so many times on so many amazing shows. But yes, I started doing a lot of media, and I was kind of thinking of maybe, I had never done anything entrepreneurial. I'd never even thought of doing anything entrepreneurial until, I started, like you, I started writing for a magazine. I was doing TV. I wrote a book, and the book was this is my first book, was kind of just the first time I had created a physical product that someone could have in their home and from that product have a healthier life. Even though it was a book, I kind of felt like, oh, they have something in their bookshelf that I wrote, it just felt really cool. And so I was like, well, maybe I do want to start a business, but I was thinking more like gut health related, honestly. That was my field. And then I started noticing, I was very interested in probiotics, as I told you, from day one when I first learned about it. And I'd been following the research over the years. And then I started noticing that the people in the patients of mine in my practice that were either taking probiotics or really focusing on their microbiome and gut health, started having improvements in their skin health. And they were noticing it. I was noticing it. And I started thinking there must be a real connection between the gut and the skin. And, so I feel like patients had thought about this for a while, meaning I had patients who told me, oh, when I'm backed up and constipated, I start breaking out. And to be honest, as doctors, both GI and dermatologists, everyone thought that was just in their minds. They were like, no, there's not really a connection. It's, your skin is your skin, your gut is your gut. And people really didn't think the two were related. But as I started noticing this phenomenon, I said, let me look into what the current research shows about this. And it turns out there was some really early, but very compelling, innovative research looking at how topically applying probiotics can actually really improve skin health in a multitude of ways. So these are probiotic extracts. So it's sort of like the postbiotics that you're talking about. They're not live bacteria, but they can increase your natural skin defense barrier, which means you're holding on to moisture more, which means better hydrated skin, increase the production of collagen and elastin, which we know is that's why we get wrinkles. So for all these reasons, it was really like a light bulb moment for me that I was like, wow, no one is talking about this gut skin connection, because literally no one was talking about it. There were a few studies that I found. And I said, this is, I think I was 40 or 41 at the time. I'm like, I'm a woman who's getting older. I think about my skin and what I can be doing. I think this could be an idea.
All day, every day.
Exactly. And I also that this was a way to kind of start this conversation with women about sort of probiotics, gut health, how it affects everything. And that's how TULA was started. I mean, I had great partners who were experienced in business. So that was definitely key for me. I wasn't kind of, doing this all on my own, but we decided to make this the core of the line, and every product has probiotic extracts. And what's amazing is, at that time it was brand new. Nobody was talking about it. So there was a lot of education that had to go into telling the public, why would you want probiotics on your skin? What are probiotics? Back then, even a lot of people didn't even know what probiotics were. And now, Keri, there's a skin microbiome conference probably every 3 weeks. I get an email about one. It's just the research,
it's wild.
The awareness has grown so much. And I just love to see that, because it sort of validates something that we started so many years ago.
Well, again, back to the beginning of our conversation, talking about how different it was from when we both started and were in school, the conversation about your gut and how much it has changed and evolved and grown. And I think we're just going to continue to see it evolve and grow at even probably a higher speed than we have in the past 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And that's why, even with TULA, at first people is this a fad? Is this oh, there's algae, was, ingredient of that year. And now, and I'm like, this is not a fad.
This is the core to our health.
Medicine, yeah. Right. Not even in just GI. This is an absolute shift in medicine, how we think. I mean, there are things like autism now that they're linking to the microbiome. I mean, it just blows my mind, and it's so fascinating. And the most exciting part is what are the therapeutics that will come out of all of this? And we're starting to see some, but I think we're going to just see a huge arsenal of therapeutics, hopefully for things like Alzheimer's and other diseases that we haven't really been able to tackle very well. I'm hoping that all this microbiome research will lead to better therapies for things like that.
Oh yeah. Alzheimer's. I could have a whole conversation with you about that. I'm so curious to see where the research goes there. We'll save that for another conversation. So a few more questions for you.
Yeah.
What do you think about collagen for gut health and improving the intestinal lining?
Yeah, I think that for me right now, the data is still early. I do know that collagen, I mean, because I'm in the skincare world as well, like now we used to be a little bit skeptical about collagen supplements for skin. Now there is some pretty good data that it can be helpful for skin health. So yeah, I mean, I think if I had to make a choice, I would definitely go for the probiotics and prebiotics over the collagen. But I'm interested to see kind of where the data goes for that.
Okay. Yeah. Just curious about that. Okay. And at some point I do want to have a longer conversation with you about your whole business and selling it and all that, because I think the whole entrepreneurial conversation is so interesting, but I want to make sure we spend a little bit of time talking about your latest venture, Yayday. So tell us about that, because I was so excited. I didn't even know you had started this whole other business. It's incredible. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I guess I sort of got the entrepreneurial bug with TULA, and I had just so much fun, exploring kind of the more creative side of my brain with naming things and picking color. I picked my favorite color for TULA. So we call it TULA blue, but it's sort of like an awkward turquoise. And if you come to my house, which hopefully you will, you'll see I have turquoise stuff everywhere. So
I love that.
All of that is just fun.
That's me with orange.
Oh, love it. Yeah. So anyway, I had a great kind of entrepreneurial journey with TULA. And to me, it was great because I always thought, first and foremost, and I still feel like first and foremost, being a doctor to me is the most rewarding experience in terms of directly dealing with people as you do and just having a big impact on their lives in a very personal and intimate way. But when I started TULA, one of the greatest surprises were these testimonials and emails and things that, letters that we would get from our customers saying how much the products just changed their lives. Not just, oh, my skin's a little bit, I tried so many lines. I have the most difficult skin. I didn't want to leave the house. And now I have like a new lease on life. Like these things really made me so gratified to be part of this entrepreneurial journey, because I didn't realize with a business, you can affect people like that. So that's one thing. Anyway, I thought it was so fascinating to start this conversation about gut health and skin health and really educate people and reach them and kind of help them achieve balance in their lives. Because we talk, TULA actually means balance in Sanskrit. So we talk a lot about balance and beauty standards and all these things. But after we sold it, I started thinking about, well, what do I want to do next? Because I do enjoy this side of my career. And I started thinking about what is the need out there? What do I personally see? And with my practice, I find myself recommending fiber probably to 70% of my patients.
Right. Because it's like you said, because the large majority of people don't get enough of it.
They're not getting it, but it's also just even for GI conditions, like we treat constipation, but sometimes we treat diarrhea, whether it's hemorrhoids. I mean, there's so many things that we're like, have you tried fiber? And what I found is that so many patients wanted to do it, wanted to follow my advice, but the options out there were just not palatable, or they reminded them of what their 95-year-old grandmother took, and they didn't feel like they were in that stage of life. So why are they taking this? So I felt like there's got to be a better solution, something that actually tastes good, is easy to, dissolve and drink, doesn't feel like it's a medicine, but more like a healthy, good, fun experience. And I also wanted to tackle two things. One is bloating, because as I'm sure you've heard, a lot of my patients try fiber and then they stop it because they just feel totally bloated. So I wanted to make sure we have.
And just bloating in general, even if they haven't started adding more fiber in, they just feel like they're bloated all the time.
Right, exactly. So we put digestive enzymes in the formulas to make sure that when we're giving you fiber, we're not also adding to bloating or giving you bloating. And then the last really core ingredient, so it's a prebiotic fiber blend, mostly psyllium, but a lot of oat fiber and other prebiotic fibers. We do have digestive enzymes. And the third key ingredient is magnesium, because
I saw that. I love that.
I would love to, you've inspired me, and I'm actually starting a sort of digital series somewhat soon. So I'm going to have you come.
That's so exciting. Amazing.
But anyway, magnesium, because this is what we're talking about, the gut-mind connection.
Yeah. And I love that you did magnesium glycinate, right? You have magnesium glycinate, which I love also. I'll let you finish. I want to interrupt, but I have thoughts on that too, which I was so excited to see that.
Yeah, just really quickly, we did magnesium glycinate because we wanted to help sleep, and stress. And we know that sleep and stress, as we've talked this whole hour, it really impacts your gut health. So I was I don't want to give someone fiber and forget the piece about gut mind. So let's do magnesium as well. This is unlike every other fiber product out there, meant to be taken at night.
Yes, so that's what I was going to ask you. If you added the magnesium glycinate so that you would have people take it at night, so then they could hopefully also go to the bathroom in the morning.
Exactly. So that's, we say better sleep, better poop, better life, basically. And
love it.
You get a good night's sleep, you wake up, you have your morning movement, and you're ready to have the fabulous day, which is why it's called Yayday.
I love it. By the way, I was thinking about that when I saw the Yayday. I was like, I think I get why she called it Yayday, because if you do have that good poop, you're like, yay.
100%. And I'm sure you see it as well as I do. When your gut health is out of whack, you're miserable. Like, you can't really enjoy life. You can't enjoy your dates. You can't enjoy your job, you know. And the opposite is, I think, true. When your gut health is working well and smoothly and everything is in balance, your mood is better, your energy is better, and you're just able to get the most out of life. So that was the motivation behind
I love it.
And we're new, relatively new. We just launched earlier this year. And now it's 2025. We were launched earlier last year, and we're just ramping up. And so, we just have one formula so far. And we're just excited to see where it goes. And so people are loving the product and loving the taste and all of those good things. So.
Yeah, well, I was really excited when I learned that you would launch the product. I was really excited when I just read about it and saw that you had the magnesium glycinate. And I was really wondering about that, like the thought behind that, and wondering if there was that because you wanted people to take it at night and all of that. So I think it's brilliant. Absolutely love that. On the poop note, though, one more question for you.
Sure.
How many times a day do you think is healthy for people to go to the bathroom, ideally, to poop?
Yeah, this is a great question, which I get a lot. And the first thing I'll say is I don't want people to get too hung up on a certain formula that their body has to adhere to, because it is different for different people. I would say, on average, having 1 to 3 bowel movements a day up until, or stretching that out to even 1 bowel movement every 2 days is fine. Because your pattern might be, and there are many people who, when they eat a meal, they pretty soon after have to go to the bathroom. As long as it's not an urgent or painful situation, that may be totally normal for you. We all have this the gastrocolic reflex, meaning when we eat and our stomach expands, then causes our colon to start contracting. And for some people, that's a bit heightened, and that's why they may go to the bathroom with every meal. If that's your pattern and it's been that way for years and you feel fine, you don't feel any comfort, I'm totally fine with that. And you should be too. But yes, I would say that's sort of the range of what we consider normal. What really worries doctors is if there's a change. So if you used to go 3 times a day and now you only go once every 2 days, that's a question for why is that happening? What's going on? And the reverse as well. Like if you used to go once every 2 days and you were fine, that's okay. And now all of a sudden, though, things that you're going only once a week, then you want to really check out why that's happening.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Last question.
Okay.
How do you live your most nutritious life? Or better, I should say, what do you do to ignite your nutritious life on a daily basis?
Yeah, I would say for me, breakfast is I'm not going to say the most important meal of the day, but it's the meal that sets the tone for the day. So I really do. Yeah, I really focus on making sure I'm getting in my breakfast antioxidants, prebiotics, probiotics, omega-3s, And it sounds maybe hard. It's not that hard to do that.
No.
So I'm very simple and somewhat, I guess, boring or regimented, because I pretty much have the same thing every day, where I have, Greek yogurt that has live and active cultures.
Right.
I add fiber cereal to that. I add mixed berries, which I keep frozen, but then I put them in my fridge. So within 5 days, I've eaten all the berries. And then I add just a sprinkle of chia seeds and a sprinkle of, or maybe like half a teaspoon of flax seeds as well, ground flaxseed. And that's how I start my morning, and with a big glass of water. And to me, I love making sure that I and everyone I love has a healthy breakfast, because even if you kind of go off the rails later, at least know you've done something good for your body.
Totally agree. And it's motivating for the rest of the day. You feel like there's a mental component there where you feel like, I've started my day off healthy. Yes, exactly. You feel really good. I love the way you just described your breakfast. I feel healthy just even thinking about your breakfast.
Very healthy too, and I'd love to hear it as well. But yes,
this has been amazing. I could talk to you for hours and hours. We're going to have you back on the podcast. I have so many more questions for you, so many more topics we could cover. Yeah. We will definitely have another conversation. But for everyone listening, I will put in the show notes where to find Roshini and where to find TULA, where to find Yayday, and all of that good stuff. So thank you so much for being here today with us.